Good evening. Tonight we're going to look at the nature of distributed knowledge and the effect it's having on organizational structure and how it's one of the primary forces driving the rise of global virtual teams. Knowledge is the key to business today. The world is controlled by knowledge. It is the vital agent that is used to frame every field of endeavor. In biology, genes encapsulate information. DNA is an error-correcting digital code. There is a science of conveyance and a science of information for any field of study. For example, in biology, the science of conveyance is the structural elements such as the cell, the mitochondria, and so on. The science of information is the DNA, and the information encapsulated in the DNA, and how that is used to synthesize proteins or determine physical characteristics. Economists are now aware that their discipline is an information science as well. Money is no longer a physical medium, it is electronic bits. The physicist John Archibald Wheeler summarizes the centrality of information to all fields, academic and business. He proposes that all things are information theoretic in origin and that the world is a participatory knowledge system. An important aspect of knowledge is that it is distributed. Friedrich Hayek is the founder of the Austrian School of Economics, and his critique of the Marxist, the neoclassical, and the Keynesian economic schools was their assumption that all knowledge was held by central decision makers and that there is an instantaneous dissemination of information about changes throughout the system. Of course, these assumptions are unrealistic. Competitive organizations now realize the need to tap into distributed knowledge. Virtual teams are a strategy to accomplish this. If all knowledge is centralized, there would be no need for virtual teams. The luminaries would gather and decide the enlightened future of the corporation. On the other hand, if knowledge is distributed, then virtual teams are required, and they must be formed with the requisite variety of knowledge to accomplish the mission, regardless of where that knowledge resides. Additionally, teams must be reformed when new missions are undertaken that require different skills to analyze and to develop solutions. We know more than we can tell or write. This is tacit knowledge. In contrast, our explicit knowledge, our speech and writing, is only what we think is relevant, and it may not be entirely informative to every pursuit. Moreover, it takes time to understand the vast extent of knowledge in even a single field, such as consumer behavior in Brazil. We cannot just rely on Google to give us knowledge. Information becomes knowledge by understanding it and then placing it into a conceptual framework. This is the role of experts. Increasingly, expertise is decentralized around the world, even within a single company. Globalization has magnified the distributed nature of knowledge. To make competent decisions, we must know about the area of operations, which is now individual markets around the world. Furthermore, expertise and technical know-how are increasingly no longer in the United States, but we must reach to experts who are in other countries. Our world is changing from a labor-based economy to a knowledge-based economy. This evening we will investigate the impact distributed knowledge has on organizations. So, how are organizations adapting to the increase in the importance of knowledge and its distributed nature? In other words, what is the economic organization in settings where rapid changes in the world have resulted in a high degree of organizational decentralization, and where relations to outside knowledge sources, such as other firms that are in your supply chain, universities for expertise, professional associations for guidance, these are often necessary, and where knowledge assets account for a large and increasing part of the value added to production. Fundamental changes with respect to information technology innovations, with respect to globalization, deregulation, with respect to increasing emphasis on maximizing shareholder value, changes in the composition of the labor force, have arguably made the need to access relevant information even more pressing. This is the start of the knowledge economy. Today, knowledge is a major and growing part of value added to production, services, and operations. The changing nature of work, with organization emphasis on knowledge and the need to discover and use necessary knowledge, has led to the knowledge economy. The nature of knowledge in the workplace is changing corporate organization and the way corporations are managed. Strategic management drives most of the projects in an organization. The purpose of these projects is to take advantage of opportunities to improve operations or enter new areas or markets. Strategy is the deliberate action to transform sensed opportunities into desired results. In an iterative manner, search activity scans environments for information. It obtains understanding from the information, formulates action to benefit the organization, and implements the strategy through an exchange of actions with the environments. There are two main aspects of effective strategy making: creativity for innovation and administration to convert creativity into successful activity. These acts of strategic management require knowledge to determine what opportunities exist, and then knowledge on how to exploit those opportunities. Strategic management now emphasizes innovation as an essential aspect for achieving success. Drucker finds that innovation is essential in every company, and he recommends that innovation be directly aligned with corporate strategy. Innovation is fueled by creative knowledge. Corporations fail to deliver results in today's challenging environment because of atrophied innovation. Why do we need innovation? We have two basic strategy choices: improve our operational efficiency, or differentiate ourselves from current competition with new features or attributes. The purpose of either choice is to become more competitive in our environment. Organizations are adapting a network organizational structure rather than a hierarchical. Network organization structures facilitate organizational flexibility. The old corporate hierarchy and its rigid processes and chain of command opposes change. It is designed to eliminate anomalies, standardize processes, solve short-term problems, and achieve stopwatch efficiency within its current operating mode. In a sense, the crowning accomplishment of the hierarchy and its management processes is the enterprise on autopilot. Everyone is ideally situated as a cog whirring on a steady, unthinking, and predictable machine. Thus, the hierarchy ignores new opportunities that require transformation because these don't align with its core purpose of maintenance and optimization. In contrast, a network form of organization is more flexible and less authoritative. Because of the growing importance of being able to access knowledge from multiple sources, knowledge-based networks are increasingly becoming the relevant dimension for understanding the organization of business activities. Such networks may even cut across the legal boundaries of the firm. Virtual teams may include people who are external to the organization. The impact of this knowledge economy on corporations are many, including new organizational structures, more networked and less hierarchical. But in addition, they are a reduction in the size of organizations, flattening of internal organization and the rise of autonomy, increased emphasis on innovation and technical advancement, and changing demand for labor skills. Again, the nature of knowledge in the workplace is changing corporate organization and the way corporations are managed. Coping with the problem posed by Hayekian distributed knowledge has become a fundamental problem confronted by managers of organizations. The challenge confronting organizations today is the discovery and use of knowledge, which is not known by a single agent, but is distributed in the environment. Firms are distributed knowledge systems. They don't have a mastermind who has the requisite knowledge to conduct central planning. Furthermore, the knowledge an organization needs is continually emerging. As Hayek put it, the problem of effectively allocating resources is a problem of knowledge not given to anyone in its totality. Managers must leverage distributed knowledge for sense-making of the environment, for innovation, and for coordination. Coordination is the small adjustments to processes to handle changes in the environment. Rigid processes cannot be easily changed to reflect changes in the environment. Moreover, if a single perspective is applied to multifaceted information, then only a small portion of the information will be recognized and processed. The rest will remain a puzzle, untouched and of no value to the organization. Of course, these are the traits of a hierarchical chain of command. Likewise, a single perspective has less ability to recognize the fully faceted nature of the complex situation. The antecedents to problem solving and to innovation are the collection of ideas, recognition of patterns, and organizing information into a repository, and then the establishment of relationships among the elements in the repository. Resolutions to problems, innovations, and coordinations then are better accomplished through collaboration of experts. With a team, not only is different information collected and different perspectives applied to understanding, but also the collaborative interactions are mutually stimulating. Collaboration does not occur naturally, but it can be culturally induced by a team. This depends on the leadership of the team, and that'll be one of our future lectures. Collaboration, especially distributed collaboration, is a new concept to the hierarchically organized companies of today. A centralized hierarchy of authority presumes a fixed decision-making process. It offers efficiency when the environment is stable, and the nature of the decisions stay within the boundary that can be managed by the authority in the hierarchy. Worlds that are momentarily stable and orderly present a danger because they create an attitude that our organization has finally provided us with a mastery over our world. DEC, Sun, IBM, Compaq, and even the Soviet Union developed such an attitude. It results in an ambivalence that reinforces the presumption that the adaptation we have in our current organizational hierarchy is durable and lasting. Confidence in a hierarchical, centralized organization structure presents a great danger in times of environmental change. When the change exceeds the competence of the hierarchy to manage, centralized arrangements fall apart and become a cruel trap. The narrow and specialized knowledge in the system is bewildered by the ambiguous changes in the environment that often results in organizational extinction. The following are some critical rules in organizing theory that apply to the new world of distributed knowledge and change in the environment. The law of requisite variety is the need to link together distributed knowledge that represents diverse knowledge as complex as the new information coming from the environment. Another rule is that adaptation precludes adaptability. In other words, when you rigidly adapt to be efficient in one environment, that adaptation usually presumes a rigid structure for knowledge. You only deal with the knowledge the old process needs to execute. On the other hand, a networked, decentralized decision-making system may be less efficient, but it is more adaptable in fluid situations. The situation in the world today is fluid. Let's see what leading Austrians think on this. Hayek says, "The knowledge of circumstances which we must make use of never exist in concentrated or integrated form, but solely as the dispersed bits of incomplete and contradictory knowledge, which all the separate individuals possess." So organizations must deal with distributed knowledge, which must be discovered, rationalized, and then put to use. As we will see in this course, distributed teams have the capability of accomplishing this and are a critical part of the knowledge economy. Another Austrian, Voss, puts it like this. Numerous writers have argued that tasks and activities in the knowledge economy need to be coordinated in a manner that is very different from the management of traditional manufacturing activities. The boundaries of firms, as well as their internal organization, are transforming to become more decentralized, to empower employees, and to interact with external knowledge assets. Earlier we noted that firms are distributed knowledge systems. Voss extends that to say they are complementary elements that are not always co-located. One more Austrian view, Cowan and Parker put it like this. Organizations are adopting new forms of decentralization to cope with the instability, uncertainty, and pace of change in the marketplace. In cluster or network working, employees of undifferentiated rank may operate temporarily on a certain task or tasks in teams. The clusters are largely autonomous and engage in decentralized decision-making and planning. The teams are conducive to individual initiative, entrepreneurship, and faster decision-making. the teams facilitate organizational flexibility. We are seeing the rise of global virtual teams. When organizations increasingly rely on knowledge networks, they wear down the authority of the formal hierarchy. Authority shifts and is shared by knowledge experts needed for a particular initiative. The old order of hierarchical authority and giving orders through a chain of command is becoming increasingly irrelevant. With firms increasingly source diverse, the complex knowledge of production and operations is becoming increasingly dispersed as well, as indicated by Hayek, and this dispersion is on a global scale. Hayek's distributed knowledge problem has become the principal problem modern management must deal with. So, where does Hayek's distributed knowledge problem lead us? A power rule governs knowledge value in an organization. A small number of staff have and apply disproportionate amounts of knowledge. It is important for organizational leaders to leverage the value of knowledge in the organization and to know where it resides. The modern business world now places more value on knowledge than on mass labor. To have a flexible workforce that can make informed decisions is essential because of the intense competition resulting from globalization and the application of information technology to production processes. Hayek's distributed knowledge and the rising importance of knowledge undermine the transactional management mechanisms and incentives of the old hierarchical chain of command. Minkler observes that if a worker knows more than the manager, the organization values that worker more than the manager who is attempting to control and monitor them. The organization of authority, norms, and teams is changing, recombining into what Foss calls new organizational forms. These new organizational forms are replacing formally defined information or authority hierarchies. So, in summary, the distributed nature of knowledge and its rising importance to modern firms has given rise to virtual teams as a normal organizational form. Cowan and Parker note that firms are adopting new forms of organization, such as virtual teams, to cope with the instability, uncertainty, and pace of environmental change. Townsend, DeMare, and Hendrickson note that virtual teams are replacing traditional co-located teams so that organizations can succeed in the increasingly complex and dynamic knowledge activities. This is the changing corporate landscape. There is not just the possibility you will work on a virtual team, there is every likelihood you will. So we've talked about Hayek. Gilder is someone else who has discussed the increasing decentralization and distributed nature of knowledge. He notes that two technology areas are leading the ability to form decentralized organizations, and that these technologies have resulted in the demise of organizations that were strongly centralized, such as the Soviet Union or highly centralized corporate structures, such as DEC or Sun or Prime Computer. The microcosm is one of these areas, and that is the increasing application of microcomputer technology throughout the economy and in business processes. The other is the telecosm, and that is the application of the rapidly advancing data and telecommunication technologies. So to decide the future direction of a business, management must understand both its external and internal environments. Analysis identifies patterns in the environment to help management minimize risk and maximize return from investment of scarce resources. Two of the general patterns in business environments are the industrialization of the former Third World and the increase in productivity from advancing technology. Centers of knowledge and excellence are now globally distributed, with the resulting increase in the globalization of business activity. For example, globalization of corporate operations has experienced strong growth since the 1970s. The trade to GDP ratio in the United States has grown from 11.1% in 1970 to 28% in 2006. Global offshoring revenues continue to show strong growth, increasing from $119 billion in 2000 to $300 billion in 2008. U.S. corporations committed $60 billion in direct foreign investment for new manufacturing in 2006. Eli Lilly Pharmaceuticals now conducts 50% of its clinical drug trials outside the United States. More globalization. The financial incentive for globalizing operations is compelling. McKinsey Consulting reports that for every $1 of U.S. business offshored, $1.46 in new wealth is generated, with $1.13 of that coming to the United States. Additionally, globalization is driven by the diffusion of technical knowledge, emerging market growth, global economic liberalization, worldwide convergence of business culture, and the corporate focus on Porter's generic strategies. The business world is undergoing a fundamental transformation from mass production, where human labor was the principal source of value, to a new era where the principal component of value creation, productivity, and economic growth is knowledge. The intangible assets that include patents, know-how, and a skilled workforce now account for over half the total market capitalization of public U.S. corporations. McKinsey has divided work in organizations into three categories: transformational, the extraction of raw materials and its conversion to output; transactional, interactions that can be easily scripted or automated; and tacit, which are complex interactions requiring a high level of judgment. So, we mentioned Porter's generic strategies, and there are two categories of strategy that Porter proposes. One is you become the most efficient producer, and you can produce at the cheapest cost, or you have to establish some sort of product differentiation to justify a higher cost for the same product because you've enhanced or added a certain feature. Technology-enhanced productivity and the industrialization of emerging countries has created a worldwide supply that exceeds demand in existing markets. Firms cannot survive in a low-cost world of overcapacity without strategies based on innovation, because existing markets are saturated with supply. As a consequence, companies must differentiate their products through innovation. Adaptability is synonymous with the survival of the organization. More than ever, organizations face an uncertain environment and relentless change. Failure to understand the environment or inappropriate response to change has pulled powerful organizations through a vortex, and after that, if they survived at all, their look and capacity was very much different than it was before. By tapping into distributed knowledge, organizations can not only endure, but can obtain competitive insights into the environment. An essential form of knowledge is the sense-making of a complex environment to obtain situational awareness. Deregulation in the 1980s increased environmental complexity. Coincidentally, in the 1980s, organizations began using projects to accomplish strategic goals. Before that, projects in the 1960s through the late 70s were usually restricted to a functional area and were managed by a functional manager. Organizational coordination across functional disciplines was not an issue, and projects did not require formal intra-organizational communications. In contrast, today, projects are cross-cutting. This project complexity began in the late 1980s and skyrocketed in the late 1970s and skyrocketed in the 1980s. Average project value remained relatively flat, around 17 million, from 1960 through 1976. In 1978, average project value started a parabolic rise to reach 80 million by 1984. Another factor increasing complexity was that product life cycles began to shorten. In the 1980s, the time to market pressures and shortened product life cycles had a profound effect on organizations. Cross-functional teams were needed to effectively deal with these new circumstances. The governing principle that explains why cross-functional teams respond more quickly and effectively to complexity is the law of requisite variety. This law states that the variety in a system must be at least as great as the environmental variety that it is attempting to influence. Ashby first proposed this law in his book Cybernetics in 1956, and he gives an example from photography. A photographer has 5 subjects, each at a different distance from the camera. The photographer's camera must have 5 settings to capture all subjects with uniform density and clarity. If the camera has fewer than 5 settings, it lacks requisite variety and will not register with sufficient detail to depict all scenes with accuracy. All right, we're going to close this evening's session.